Welcome to Real People, Real Matters. This is Diana Tulchinsky with my first guest, Chris Karabas. Chris, please tell me about your earlier life. And
The older I get, the
yeah.
more earlier life there is to talk about. I grew up in Des Plaines, Illinois, went to Maine West High School, and after that did my college years at Northern Illinois. And in my final year, I transferred to Columbia because I wanted to study the business side of music and film, because I was you get to that point where you got to think about what you're going to do with your life, and nothing else really appealed to me. So
you changed majors and directions.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I didn't really have a declared major at Northern, even by my third year. So I realized I better lock in on something.
Did you have a music background in your high school?
Not really. Like I played sports in high school, and then junior year is when I always loved music. I was a big Elvis fan as a kid, and would do these little Elvis shows for anyone that would watch, but really didn't learn an instrument. When I was younger, I took piano lessons for a day.
A day, wow.
One whole day.
What did you do with sheet music? Throw it out, or?
I had a sister that took lessons, so we did have quite a collection of sheet music that went unread for many years.
Wow.
But then junior year in high school is when my musical interest really went to the next level. I had heard a Springsteen song on the radio called Thunder Road.
Oh, that was his original?
Yeah, and that was there's a great piano intro, and I really just wanted to learn that. So I taught myself over many months how to do that, and through teaching myself that song, I learned a lot about piano, and went on to learn other songs and formed some various bands in high school and through college. So,
how was your dad and mom supportive of your music?
I think they were surprised at first that I had such a strong interest in it, because no one else in my family really had expressed an interest to learn an instrument. We had a piano in the house, but they were very supportive. I played sports in high school, so that they were very supportive of that, and I think they were just great parents, because they supported anything my brothers or sister and I were into, and music included.
Did your dad have a restaurant and a bar in Chicago?
Yeah, that was actually in Morton Grove. It was on one side it was sort of an upscale steak and seafood place, and the other side was it was a saloon. I mean, it was a bar. Construction guys and blue collar guys came after work, and there was live music there.
Nice.
So as a little kid, I was always amazed to go through the doors that separated the two, because there was just two different worlds, and I was always attracted to the saloon side, where the music was playing and people were a little more relaxed. So as a little kid, one of my jobs was to make sure that there was ice for the bartenders, and the one side was always stocked with ice, because I was always looking for an excuse to go over there.
Did you see any stars like Woody Allen or Barbra Streisand?
No, my father, before that, I think you're referring to a place called Mr. Kelly's, which back in the 60s was a big stop for celebrities. Chicago, many years ago, getting from LA to New York, not many flights would go all the way, so Chicago was sort of a stop halfway. Therefore, Chicago had a pretty interesting entertainment scene, and my dad worked at a place called Mr. Kelly's, and that's Woody started there, Barbra Streisand, I think the Rat Pack, that was sort of the social center of Chicago, and a lot of big names. And I grew up hearing stories about that place and listening to some bootleg tapes of performances. It was just a fascinating thing for a kid to grow up hearing about this place,
And how did you like Columbia College? Did they support you with your advertisement, or they didn't want you to become an accountant?
Yeah, no, Columbia was interesting to me, because it was the first place I had heard of where there was an actual school that I could go to study these things. And it was really encouraging for me, and the fact that school, it was a much smaller school back then. It was only a couple buildings. Now it's an entire campus, but it just felt good to be surrounded by other people with similar interests, and knowing that was a viable career path, to work in film or music, either in front of the camera or behind the camera. It was really an encouraging thing for me. Whereas at Northern, I didn't realize, they had a radio, TV, film program there, but Columbia was really just, you were immersed with other artists and people like that. So,
What
that
was
a
your
lot of fun.
first two jobs like after Columbia?
After after Columbia, I remember I didn't know what I wanted to do. And one of the common things all my friends were doing was working on the stock exchange,
Oh,
Like it was just a job and they were making some money. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try that. And through some friends and family, got hooked up with a job. But the day before I was about to start, I got offered this job with these two guys that wrote a lot of the big jingles in commercial advertising.
great.
So I took that job, and I remember the first day my dad thought I was going to the stock exchange. So he says, how was your
Yes,
first day at
yes.
work? I said, well, I didn't go to that job. He said, why not? I said, well, this other great opportunity came up. He's
So
like,
you
what?
s- you
He's like,
gave
well,
up the stock
I,
exchange?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it was just an entry-level minimum wage job, but he's like, well, tell me about the new job. And I said, well, it's in a recording studio with these guys that write commercial music. He's like, oh, that's exciting. How much are they paying you? I said, well, they buy me lunch every day, but that's, that's it for now.
Oh,
And he never batted an eye and said, that's great. I think he knew I wasn't meant for the other path. So
yes.
he supported me. I was still living at home for a
Oh,
couple of
nice.
years. And,
What-
yeah, but then that job turned into more,
When did you go to Nashville?
Nashville, this is after when I was working for the music company. I was there for about 3 years, and I did everything. You start out doing whatever you can, emptying garbage cans,
Like
going
a
to get
gopher.
lunch. You're a gopher. Then slowly but surely they gave me more responsibility. I started singing on some sessions, and I got put on a Miller beer campaign, I remember.
Oh, yeah.
And the residuals from that just kept coming in. I had no idea. Here I was working, I think at the time I was making $100 a week. But then these residual checks started coming in. I was like, wow, I've got a nest egg here.
Yes. Yes.
So I decided I didn't have the composition talent to read music and to really compose the way these guys were doing it at that level. But I knew I loved singing and writing songs. So I decided to go to Nashville, which was Nashville's I don't know, for lack of a better word, it's the marketplace for mostly country music.
Country, yes.
There was a system there where it made it possible to go down there and write with other people. There's a network of songwriters. There was a network of musicians. There was the record labels. It was all there. So rather than New York or LA, that seemed a little daunting at the time, Nashville just felt like a good place for me to go and give it a shot. And I went down there in the mid-'90s. This is right when country music had its first explosion with Garth Brooks and guys like that. So there was a ton going on. And, I just remember going there with my brother, found an apartment, and on day one, I just started going to Music Row, which was a great little section in Nashville. Back in the day, it looks like any neighborhood street, just homes after home, but every house was a record label
Yes.
or a recording. You just didn't know. No one lived there, but everyone worked there. So I would just knock on these doors.
How did they receive you? Like, oh, where do you come from?
It's funny. I think I look back at that time, and this is before the internet. So you ripped out the pages from the yellow pages and looked up all the record labels and music publishing houses. So you have that in one hand, you've got your guitar in the other, and you just go down the list. And I knocked on, I remember knocking on the door, I think it was Curb Records.
Curb Records.
And I just asked for the president,
The
figured.
president, yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, oh, he's not here, but thanks, drop off your tape.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they were there and they'd be happy to see you. Not always, but now it's unheard of,
Yeah.
But back then it was a little more, you knock on the door, and next thing you know, you're in a studio with one of the top producers in the business. It's crazy.
So you're trying to write songs and you don't even know sheet music, but
Correct. Yeah, and I think it's true of a lot of the musicians and songwriters is we don't know how to read the music. Um, we just know how to play it. It's kind of a difficult thing to understand unless you do it. Um, but yeah, you sit down at a guitar or a piano and playing. I just I never loved reading, trying to read music. It just didn't connect with me. Whereas
oh
just
no.
picking up a guitar or a piano is much more organic and less
Did anybody
mechanical, I guess.
like you or like accept? Do you accept a label or a record label or?
I did get signed to a label when I was there, and then at the same time also got a publishing deal. And the recording thing was great. Ultimately the record never came out and was never a big success,
Oh.
But I did get tied in with a publishing deal, which really taught me a lot about songwriting because I had a little office I'd go to every day. You get paired up with other writers, and you're just writing. You're writing.
Oh, right.
You're writing terrible songs. You're writing good songs, and once in a
Yes.
while you're writing great songs. And then they give you money to go into the recording studio and hire musicians to record a demo. So it was really an incredible experience. And I think I learned more in those couple of years musically
Yes.
than anything, just the craft of songwriting.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
When did you establish the Rock House?
So that happened. When I left Nashville, I gave myself till I was the ripe age of 30. I said, if I don't have an album out by the time I'm 30,
It's done.
there's other things I want to
Yes.
pursue. And I had seen, Nashville's full of people that didn't give themselves that deadline, and it's sort of a dismal
Yeah.
existence, when
Yes.
you're going after it without much to show. So I came back, started a family.
When
and-
did you meet your wife?
My wife and I were friends in college and remained friends for 8 years.
Oh, good.
And then when I moved to Nashville, I think she decided it was probably safe to give dating a try with a little distance
yes.
between us.
Very big difference, Chicago and Nashville.
Yeah, so that was back when you could fly on Southwest Airlines for,
Very cheap.
$40,
Yes.
So we did a long distance relationship for probably my last year in Nashville. And then I moved back and we eventually got married. Had twins, and when we had the twins, that's when I, even though I left Nashville, I still loved music and loved playing it, and even put a band together in Chicago. But I wrote a kids album when I had the twins. Like every day I'd drive to work and a song, it was just such a magical time when you've got these kids and you're observing them, and
Yes.
every little discovery they make is a huge deal. So that inspired me to write a batch of songs, which I went down to Nashville to record because that's where I just knew how to make records down there. They have a specific way they do it, and played with a lot of guys on the Garth Brooks records played on that. So
Oh,
musically,
wow.
it's just
Yeah,
it's a
famous
feast.
guys.
It's great. And I just remembered how much I loved doing it. So
Yes.
the band I was in, we took things a little more seriously and started doing more of my original music. And as the twins got a little older, going back, it took the long way to answer your question. I moved to Wilmette with my wife and kids, and it just dawned on me, because everyone in the neighborhood knew I was in a band and was into music. And a lot of the kids in the neighborhood would come to my house and say, "Hey, could you show me how to play this?" And they'd hold this. There's
they
one
would
girl
know you.
specifically. She'd knock on their door. It had this pink guitar, and she'd say, "Hey, Mr. Karabas, could you show me how to play this thing?" And I was like, "Well, it takes a little. I need more than 10 minutes."
Yes.
So I decided, what if I started a music school that teaches kids to play music the way I taught myself, which is identifying a song that you love and learn to play that. Forget about reading the music. Learn to play that song.
Karaoke style?
No, it's it's really just identifying a song you like and looking at those chords. And if it's guitar, you're learning those chords. And because you love this song, that's sort of your motivation.
Oh, yes.
So if a little girl wants to learn a Taylor Swift song, she is going to work hard because she
Yes.
she knows what the end result sounds like. If you put in the traditional way of learning, you put a piece of Chopin or Beethoven,
Yes, I remember
people are
those.
like, I don't even know what this is supposed to sound like, you know. So
Yeah,
it might,
very difficult.
so it's very easy for a kid to lose interest
Very, yeah,
because you've got
that's
to
very true.
identify the note, read the note, translate that into what it means here or here.
Yes.
And most people, you know, I think most people in their lives have taken lessons, but
Mm-hmm.
few adults can pick up an instrument and play.
Why did you choose Glenview to be like the location?
Well, Wilmette was the first one. It was a tiny little storefront, one room, and we got busy so fast. We had to expand into the space upstairs. There was an apartment building that a two-bedroom apartment that we converted the kitchen and bedroom, all these rooms into music rooms, and we decorated them really cool. One room was full of lava lamps. One was, you know, everyone had its own little
Genres.
theme,
Yes.
which I felt was really important because when you're in a creative process, you need I think it helps to have a creative environment.
How many students would you get in like the first
We
year?
had we went from 0 to 100 in the
100
first
students?
few months.
Wow.
And that's when I realized this is a good idea and it's more than a hobby. And I had another career. This was always just a passion project of mine. But I saw how popular it was and decided to move it into a bigger space in Wilmette and then to add a coffee and wine bar where the kids could perform. And then I thought, you know, coffee shops and music, it's been since the 60s, it was a
Yes.
good idea, you know, 50s and 60s.
Ambiance and
Yeah,
coffee
just,
house.
you know, Virgin Records sort of started that way as a coffee shop and a record store. So coffee and music, it all just organically went together. It just felt like a good thing. And then we added beer and wine for evening performances.
And the parents could see that.
Yeah, the
yes.
parents could hang out while the kids are taking lessons, and it became, as a lot of the parents said, their favorite half hour of the week, because I didn't want music to be a thing where parents would just drop their kids off, another drop-off thing. Drop the kid off, come back in an hour. I wanted them to stay and be part of this experience and maybe listen to music, and that's what a lot of parents did. It became this special little place, and I decided let's do another one. You know, let's bring, because I was getting such good feedback from parents of children that were really didn't find their home in team sports, couldn't really find their thing. Turns out music was their thing. They just never had an opportunity to be at a place like this, you know, where they could be themselves and in a large way decide the course of their music education. They pick the songs they want to learn, you know. So
very
they really got
important
to
to
express
parents.
themselves. And so when we decided we were going to do another location, like Glenview it took me about 5 seconds to decide, just because I knew a lot of people here. I love the town, and it just seemed like I'm a big fan of sort of the thing I liked about the Wilmette location was that it was in the old part of downtown, you know. And so when I did it in Glenview, I wanted to find sort of the equivalent, a part of town that needed an injection of excitement, and I found the perfect spot where we are today, and it feels more neighborhoody and homey.
Yes.
And so it happened like the decision for Glenview was immediate. It was close to my house. I felt like I knew some of the people, and the location was there. So it was really easy.
And
for
what's
us.
next for the Rock House?
Oh, we got exciting stuff happening. We just were bought by a gentleman named John Lonergan, who started the Big Blue Swim School, and they have successfully franchised that business. And he was looking to do something in the music space, and a mutual friend of ours introduced us, and he told him about what we were doing at the Rock House, and he was impressed. He loved it and felt this was the thing that we could grow into other
Expand,
states.
yes.
And hopefully have hundreds in the next 5 years if all goes well.
And what is your second career? Like, do you make jingles on TV?
No, I'm in the film side. So I represent a production company where directors that make films want to do commercials in between projects. And so we do anything from commercials to short films that the brands support
short
and pay
films
for.
Promotion.
Yeah, so it's advertising and entertainment. It's sort of in the middle of the two, bringing those two worlds
Do you know any
together.
famous actresses, or at least a Silverstone, or?
We, yeah, I mean, probably my first project. I'd been working in Chicago for many years, representing production companies, and then about 2 years ago, I went to work for Ridley Scott. So I was commuting out to LA every Monday, and coming home every Thursday, and through that I met Ewan McGregor. We did a project together for a motorcycle company. Zach Braff, we did a 10-minute short film that Adobe sponsored it. They wanted to do they did a cool thing where they ran a contest, and they asked college kids to make up a movie poster out of the blue. Just use Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator and make a movie poster. So our challenge was I had to find a director who would pick a winning poster, write a short film based on the poster, and produce it. So I had met Zach Braff out in Hollywood and talked to him about it. We were just chit-chatting, and I said, hey, here's a cool project. Would you be into doing it? And he said, yeah. So we did it, and he got his friend Alicia Silverstone to be in it. Florence Pugh, who's going to be a huge name in a couple of years. So yeah, we did this great little 10-minute period comedy.
Oh, nice.
It's called In the Time It Takes to Get There. So that was my first short film that I produced, and we won an award in Cannes for it. So it was exciting.
Oh, it's very.
But it's a really good example of a brand getting into the entertainment world.
And how do you like the Glenview area? Like, the kids, and like, how do you like the North Shore audience?
I mean, they've been so supportive. Every time I do a show, there's usually a good following. I play a lot in the city or in Rosemont, and every time I do a show, there's a huge support for that, which is great.
And how do you like the education in the Glenview area, even the North Shore, like for your kids? They're going to school.
It served my kids well. They're off to college the twins are off to college next year, and any pressure they had to do well came from themselves.
Yes.
Parents all have different styles. Mine are let a kid be themselves, and their path will become natural and harmonious. But yeah, I think I'm impressed at the level that they teach up in this area compared to, when I was in high school.
Plains or other.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a time period, growing up in the 70s as opposed to now. But yeah, I'm very impressed with the schools up here all around.
Thank you, Chris Karabas, for this interesting conversation of how the Rock House formed.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for watching Real People, Real Matters. This is Diana Tulchinsky with my guest, Chris Karabas. Please watch us again.